Hello folks, in this video we're going to go through what it takes to create a wood plan based on something that you lay out and design in SketchUp. So what we're going to build is a boot bench or a hall bench, call it what you will, kind of a mudroom entry. And to do so, first thing we need to do is grab our rectangle tool, and we're going to lay out a room that is, we'll call it 5 feet wide by 8 feet long. So we will go and draw our rectangle, and then all that you have to do is begin typing, and it's going to set the dimensions. I'm working in inches, so I do have to type the dimensions in inches. So I go 60 as my width, and then type comma for the next width, and let's make it a 10-foot room, 120, and hit the enter key, and you see it jumps to that size. So then we need to build some walls. We're just going to do 4-inch thick walls, so we just click the offset tool, drag the cursor out in the direction we wish the walls to go, type 4 because we're going to have 4-inch walls, so I just type the number 4 and hit enter, and it will offset 4 inches. Then we're going to bring these walls up, so we're going to call them 8 feet high, so we're just going to use the push pull tool, as you can see up there, and raise them up. And again, we can do this just by typing the dimension rather than dragging them to a specific point. So I could type 96 and that would know it's in inches, or I could just type 8 with the single quote so that it's 8 feet and press enter. So there we have our 5 foot by 5 foot by 10 foot room. And to make this easier to work with, because we just have a closed box, I'm going to go ahead and use our section plane. So I go to Tools, and I believe this is a new version of SketchUp. I believe the section plane tool might be visible, but we'll go ahead and do it through the Tools menu. And we'll select that and do it one more time. And I'm just clicking on the plane that I wish to get rid of. Okay, so now we have our room with an open end, so it gives us a little ability to do some adjusting. I'm going to put my bench at 18 inches high. So I use my measurement tool, and I click any area on this line other than the center point or the end point, and just start dragging up. And I know I want it 18 inches up, so I just type 18 and hit enter. Now that is just a guideline, so that everything snaps to my guides. So then I'll take, and I want a just 3/4 inch wide upper, so I know my dimensions are going to be 60. So I'm going to do 3/4, comma 60, and the the top part of my bench will start to take shape. If I know I want to pull this out then 19 inches from the wall, I have these dimensions because of a specific project plan. I just click in that section with the push pull tool, drag out, type 19, hit enter. Okay, so now we have just a simple bench for our hall. Now this plan calls for a left-hand side tower, and we're going to make that 16 inches wide. So this is really just a how-to for SketchUp. It's not a specific plan. At the end of this video or in the comments, you'll actually see a design plan for a 58.5 inch wide mudroom. It was essentially built around a basket that cost $8, but for the dimension we had to start somewhere. So we're going to go over 18 inches. That's going to be a bit much. We're going to go over 16 inches. Type 16, hit enter, and then we have our guide. I also know that we're going to go up, let's call it 60 inches from there. So I'm going to do a 3/4 inch piece, and again it's like a piece of plywood. So I will go, and I glance down at my lower right because it tells me which dimension I need to change first. So I go 3/4, comma 60. So then we have our 60-inch tower piece. I will do the same thing for this end. Okay, so then I'm going to pull that forward. Let's see, I'm going to measure this Once again, so I have a 19-inch, and I'm going to have a 2-inch difference between the face of my cabinet and the edge of the bench. So I will pull this forward, 17, and press enter. And then for this one, just so you know, you can always snap to another point. So in this case, I'm going to snap to the opposite side, so they're equally set back an equal amount. I could just type 17 and hit enter, but if I just touch the face of what I want it to meet up to, as you see, it'll jump to that point. So I just touch that, and then I have those in an equal dimension. So then in this case, I have a shelf that goes across the top that has a 1-inch overhang from the top of my left-hand tower. So I will rotate this to give myself a little better look. Go ahead and get to the corner, and then I will, with this being 17, I'll make it 18 inches. You can see it wants to snap to things that you place it next to. So I'll go 18, comma, 3/4, and type enter. And then once again with our push-pull, I will select that little section. You see it limits the offset. So I'll go ahead and set it there. Whenever it snaps to an endpoint and limits the offset, just go to that point and then select it again, and you'll be able to bring it over and complete what you were looking to do. So let's go ahead and take a peek at what we have so far. We've got a relatively straightforward bench. In my case, the design calls for a bench underneath as well, along with some 1x2s supporting the bench along the way. And so for this case, I'm going to show you another function that you can use within Sketchup where you're not deleting an object or deleting a section, we're just going to hide it. So you simply go to your cursor, select the object, you can see it goes dotted when it's selected, and we will just right click on the mouse and then click hide. So then I can work underneath this easily without having to pop in and out from underneath the floor. So I'm just going to put a 1x2 that is 1 inch back. So I'll just go ahead and create my point. You notice when I drag along a line, it will just it won't show the line all the way across the object the way it did with our earlier guides. So I'll just type 1 for 1 inch. Now you can barely see it if you're zoomed out, but here you can obviously see that little point. So we're going to do a 1x2, which is of course 3/4 by 1.5. So I'll do 1.5, comma 3/4, and there's my 1x2. It'll drag all the way across with the push-pull tool. Whoops. Okay, so we've completed the lower bench, and one thing that I know we're going to do, we're going to go up and split the difference to create a lower bench. In my case, I know we're going to be 9 inches high on the upper side. So I'll just type 9 and hit enter for my guideline. And then again, the rectangle tool, draw my rectangle. And one thing, if it's already snapped to an endpoint here, which obviously it has, the only dimension I need to give it is the first one. So I just need to give it the 3/4 and hit enter, and then I have my object. So I will go to the push-pull tool, pull this out, and again I'm going to snap it to the face of something else that's in that exact same dimension. So that gives me that 19-inch depth once again. I'm not going to get into details with the middle supports. This is just a demonstration of how to do a layout, a wood plan layout in SketchUp. So again, we'll quickly do the 1 inch guideline, and then we'll drop a 1x2. Once again, 3/4, comma 1.5, hit enter, and then we will push pull. You'll find when working in tight spaces with SketchUp that you'll often end up inside of a wall Not often, but occasionally end up inside of a wall, and you're not going to move as quickly or as easily when you're in there. One thing I found is an easy way just to jump back out and zoom in is to just click on the Zoom Extents tool, and you'll see it just pops you out, puts every object that's in your model in your view window, and then you can reposition yourself and get back into place. So for this, we will use the push-pull, drag it over, and then we're all set with those two items. We're also going to do a 1x2 at the top, and there's just going to be a little lip of an overhang there because this is only a 1-inch overhang, so there'll be a little 1/4-inch lip. So let's drop our 1x2 down. So again, 1.5 comma 3/4, and we'll drag that over. One thing when you're spanning a wide area, even 4 feet, it's not a bad idea to put a cleat at the back side of the wall, like a 1x2 cleat, and in this case a 1x2 piece that I'll join up with some glue and screws, just to give rigidity or stability to that object. It's also a much better look in my opinion. So we'll use our push-pull, and again the offset is limited, so we just do it to the limit and then grab, whoops, so we just do it to our limit and then grab that again, and you'll be able to come all the way across. Okay, so we've got something simple. In this case it's 3 slabs of plywood, it's some 1x2s, a couple of upper shelf column pieces, and it's a relatively straightforward boot bench. Now I would also trim these pieces out by 1x2 with 1x2s, but I'm going to drop some shelves in first. I'll show you a simple tool that will give you a way to equally divide an object. So we're going to click on a line and then right click once that's selected and click the divide option. Now you see these red lines appear, and if I don't move my mouse it's just going to segment it the way it chooses to, and then as I move my mouse up you'll see it changes the number of segments just by moving my mouse. I know I want 3 shelves equally spaced, and so I segment the line. So when I click that, it divides this line. Even though you don't see it, it does divide the line. So if I select something else and then go back to select the line, you'll see the only part that's blue, it's difficult to see here, but the only part that's blue or selected is that divided section. So from here, see it jumps to that end point. I know that I want a 3/4-inch wide shelf, so I'm just going to do that shelf 3/4 inches, and then I'll drag it across. One thing you'll want to do to clean things up is just draw that line so that it knows that should be where it's divided. Whoop. Once again, in a wall, working in a somewhat tight space. I should have used the divide tool on this side to give myself a little visual space, but that's okay. Alright, so I will select that already divided section, and I picked the upper and dropped down from the upper. So again, comma 3/4, because the 17-inch length is the first of the 2 dimensions, so I do comma 3/4 to give myself that 3/4-inch shelf piece, and then I'm just touching the face that I'm going to, and that jumps to the proper point without running through the item. The right side of the tower, that is. And again, if you put yourself in a tight spot, it makes it a little harder. So once again, select the line. I don't necessarily need to select the line, but it just gives me a better visual of where to start my rectangle. So it jumps down there, comma 3/4, and then push pull to the other side, and then clean it up by making sure that that shelf is a separate part. Okay, now this is a very simple design that you could easily pull off and then take and do a proper layout do a cut list from, and just get an understanding of what you have in front of you. Now, I don't like the just finished edge plywood look. It's a little simple or scrawny looking. So I will drop a 1x2 down and just make sure that you have your basket dimensions or whatever you're going to use that space for that works. So I will just do 1.5, and don't worry about that closing up. It's an easy fix to get rid of that. Just click it once with the cursor and hit the delete button, and it deletes that. It's just Sketchup is sometimes too smart for its own good. You can close spaces just by simply drawing a line along a side. Let's give ourselves a little better view. You can also, this is just one thing you'll notice, if I have a tool live, like the push-pull tool, and I jump into a different tool to reposition, you don't lose the push-pull. So once I go back to it, I still have that section selected. So I'm going to drop it down to the bottom, and then I know as far as the lumber goes, that's going to be a straight line. So then in this case, we need to drop the 1x2 down on the other side. So I will take my rectangle, and again, look to the lower right and you'll see the dimension window. And I know the 1.5 section is the first of the two dimensions, so it's 1.5 by 3/4. I will just type 1.5, hit enter, closes up, not a problem. Select it, press delete, and then we'll push pull. And once again, we're in a bad position. When I get myself in a good position, select the push pull again and touch the point where it needs to run to. Now this isn't exactly the way I would do it in terms of construction, but it's something to simplify the way you should do it for the plan, or the way that you could do it for the plan. I would normally leave a 1/4 inch overhang on this end panel here. Same thing on the end. I wouldn't put that plywood flush up to a wall. That's certainly not going to be square and true, especially if it's a drywall corner. But this gives you some idea of how to do things. Similar to these styles, I would create some rails across here out of 1x2 just to give a nicer look, a little more substantial look. So we'll go 1.5. I'm just going to go ahead, and you can see the order of things can matter at times, but not really here. So I'll just go 1.5. And again, don't worry about those closing up. It's no big deal at all. 1.5. And then I do like to delete them before I drag my push-pull over, though, because I don't want them to become a part of the geometry. Okay, so push-pull, and we're just going to drag over, and we know it's going to touch there. It's going to touch there. And then let's draw our lines to be sure we're good. Alright. Whoop, we did miss one. Okay, so now we end up with something that works in our space, and we can actually go ahead and put some finishes on this as well. This is just a quick example. This is your materials bucket, and it includes all sorts of things, including paints, woods, patterns. You can actually import your own just by importing a graphic. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and select wood. I'm going to select from these are all just the stock wood colors. We'll go ahead with something darker. And again, it's whoops. It's just a matter of preference and what you want to do here. You can see it has some OSB built in. And you can actually edit this from within the program. So let's say I just wanted to go a little darker. It's as easy as dragging down the color wheel, and it will change that object in your model. So in this situation, I have portions of this project that are stained and portions that are white. So then let's just say I have a wall color Go ahead and pick colors. Ooh. And we'll just pick a simple let's just pick wheat, builder's beige type color. And you can see this looks completely different from this wall, and this is just a matter of what SketchUp does in terms of shadow, shading. It makes it a pretty realistic look. At times it doesn't look right, but it gives you a good idea of how things will look. You can change those settings as well so that it doesn't do all the shading and shadows. So as you can see, we came up with a pretty simple plan and executed on that plan, and you could really take it as far as you wanted to go with it. To get rid of our section panes here, it's just simply the eraser tool, and just drag it across the item, and our wall reappears. So let's say you wanted to hide the room completely. Well, in this case it didn't make it a grouped object, so you can't necessarily hide the room completely, but you could hide those objects just to work within that space without the shadowing of the section pane. So there we have it. That's how to do a simple boot bench. And then let's say you forget a dimension, like you knew that this was going to be laid out, whatever we made it, 16 inches over, and you don't want to necessarily do the math on what that piece will be. You can literally go back into the room and just measure your piece and say, oh, okay, it's 13 inches, so I need 3 1 by 2 by 13 inches. So it really gives you a great way to build out your project without having every single dimension right, as long as you get most of them right. So I will share a finished project boot bench at the end of this video, and if you have any questions, feel free to email and we'll be happy to help you out or answer any questions.